Everyone, and welcome back. We are working on a African Queen quilt. The quilt top has been done, and it is now time to put this together. So I have some things that are already set and ready to go for this. And I will share that with you so that you can see it and we can go from there in terms of getting everything together. This is the quilt itself. It's already been quilted and I have that done. I use my domestic machine for the lines, for the swoops. Everything has been finished. I've already created the binding, so it's here, it's ready to go. And traditionally, I would just put the binding on. But because this is a wall hanging, what I would love to do is to create some pockets that will go on the back, and then I can slip the rod in on the top of it. So I'm going to show you that as well today. So I need to remember where the top is. And this is just more for directionals that maybe, you don't know where the top is. So you want to determine what the top is going to be. I know because I want her head up top. And I'm just going to place some clips here because I'm going to be working with the back. I have two squares. These are 4x4. And what I'm going to do is take them to create the pockets. I'm just going to fold them in half and then press them. Now there are different ways that we could do the pockets. They don't have to be done this way. We could create a unit that looks like this. It requires a little bit more work, and then we can set it up at the top of this. And what happens is you can run the rod through it this way. Opposed to putting corner pockets in. That means the rods can then be as long as they need to be. In this case, I'm going to need a rod that's going to fit from corner to corner in order for this to work. And of course, I don't have the rod yet. I'm going to go out and buy a rod, but I just want to get these pockets, and it is something that I wanted to make sure that I added. So we're going to just press those again. Go. And so the units look like this. You'll see that there is the raw edge here, and then this, of course, is not a raw edge because it's folded in half. And then we're going to take this. Let me back the camera up just a little bit so that's a better angle. And let's not let it fall. We'll turn that way. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to place this right here in the corner, and we're going to clip it. Okay, so this is going to be the open end for the pocket, and then these are going to get sewn in when I put the binding on. I'll do the same thing over here. And again, this is why I marked it, because sometimes when you're not paying attention, you walk away from your project, you forget, you're rushing, you're not paying, it's just like, it just makes life a little bit easier to have those clips there to remind you of where everything goes. And then it looks like that. Okay. So I decided I wanted to just use the fabric that I already used for the backing, but you could absolutely use any sort of fabric in those corners. Now it's time to attach the binding. Okay, so now unravel the binding. I like to attach the back and then roll it around to the front. You give yourself enough of a tail so that you can add that binding. Okay, we're going to clip. We don't need a whole lot of clips, just enough to hold it in place. And then I'm going to lift this one up, and I came out of view. So where I clipped that around, and then I'm going to do this corner. And when I get to the corner, I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch from the corner. And then I am going to, it'll be right about there, and then I'm going to turn it 45 degrees and run right off that corner. I didn't want it on this side. I did this on the wrong side. I just realized that when I go to put this on my machine, I want it this way. So we'll start over here. And we'll just clip it. Same thing. We're just starting from a different angle. And it's just the way that I want this to show up on my machine. I just realized I went in the wrong direction. Good, good. Okay, so we'll show that part when we get there. So we'll pull our camera up. We'll pull our machine up. And we're going to do a 1/4 inch stitch. Again, I have my tail that will be out. Line this up with my machine. I'm going to move my needle over. Oops. Get my thread out of there. I just don't want a thread nest to go down here. So I'm working on binding for my quilts, and I'm working on quilting my quilts. So that's my goal this weekend. I need to bind and I need to quilt, because some of us have a bunch of quilt tops or unfinished projects that need to be finished. And we're just going to do a 1/4 inch. You could use your walking foot. This foot has been doing pretty well for me. So I'm not using my walking foot for this. But I think, you know, my walking foot tends to act a little bit better. And it's always switching it. Okay. We're going to get down to this corner, and we're going to stop a 1/4 inch before the end. Okay. We're going to pivot this 45-degree angle, and you can see that corner right there. And we're just going to run this off. And I like to do a back stitch. You don't have to. I fell on the floor. Okay. And we'll show this 2 different ways. Let's move the machine back just a little bit. Let's cut this off. So you can see I stitched the straight line here, and then I turned 45 degrees and went right off that corner. You take your binding and you're going to stretch it 45 degrees right along that line. You'll get this 45-degree angle here, and your line itself is going to be parallel with the quilt. So it's going to be right in line with that quilt. Then you're going to take your binding and fold it back over on itself. I'm going to move that clip and then reclip it. I can reclip on this, I can clip on this side. just so that it just lays over top. Okay, and I'll pull this clip off for a minute just so you can also see that you have this excess here that's going to create the miter. Okay, and it should line up just about perfectly perpendicular on either side. Okay, I'm going to move that out of my way. Put that clip there just to hold it out the way. And so we'll come in close so you can see it, just how beautiful that lines up. There's that diagonal that's here. And I'm going to turn it this way. So now I can place this underneath my machine again. Let's move it up a little bit. And we're going to do a 1/4 inch straight down again. Okay, went a little slow, and my needle is trying to go through a lot of layers of fabric because somebody probably needs to change that needle again. And what I'm just doing is going straight down. So I'm going to go all the way down to the other corner. Now, my other pocket isn't is all the way up in the corner, so I'm going to end up going around the other two corners before I get back to that other pocket again. And again, I would have done better had I used my walking foot. But I like to do some videos with and without those tools because they make your life easier. They're not a must. Like, if you can't do this if you don't have it. So the goal is to try to make your life easier. But your goal is not to run yourself into the poorhouse if you're just learning how to quilt. Okay, 1/4 inch from the end. You're going to turn it 45 degrees and run it right off the corner. So I don't believe in going to the poorhouse. And I don't believe in telling people to go to the poorhouse just to get everything that I have. You could absolutely do this without all those tools. Okay, so again, my 1/4 inch down the side, I pivoted 45 degrees, ran it off that corner. And again, you could see it ran right off the corner. Okay, that's what helps to frame out for your miter corner. We take the binding, we fold it back. It's going to naturally give us a 45-degree angle. You can really see that there. And then we're going to fold it back onto itself. And I like to play with it just a little bit to make sure everything is nice, snug, and straight. We can clip just to get that end down. And then we can just clip over here to hold that in place. So again, on this side, you'll see the 1/4 inch. We stopped, we ran off. On this side, everything looks nice and straight and laid over top. Take it back to our machine. One thing I like about this with the smaller quilts, it's easier to see the whole process than if I use a bigger one, because then I have more edges to get through, longer edges, than I do on a smaller one. Like to do, I call them like almost like a palette cleanser. If I do my smaller quilts, right, I feel like lickety split I can get these done much faster than the bigger ones. It takes longer to quilt the bigger quilts. It takes longer to put the binding on. And sometimes the smaller quilts allow me to say, okay, you have a sense of accomplishment because you got something done. Okay. Okay, we're not one more. We'll probably about get us there. Yep. 1/4 inch off that seam. You can cut it or you can leave it there. It doesn't matter. You're going to cut it at the end anyway. I'm going to leave this up here. So again, I ran that 1/4 inch off. Thank you for liking the live. I appreciate you. Okay. We see that diagonal line. It's folded back straight or perpendicular to this. Parallel rather, and then we fold it back over on itself. I'm just going to clip in that little corner to hold that in place. Turn it, and then we're going to go here, and we'll do the same thing. So we now have, I think, this will be side number 4. But we have not finished 3 because remember we started midway through the first piece because we had to leave a tail. We start in the center because when we do binding, we want the binding to look like one continuous piece. Now there are people who do this differently. They have found new ways to do it. I don't like to experiment on a live because I don't like to mess it up, and I feel like I'm rushing on a live sometimes to get it done, and I don't want to mess up, even though I don't have a problem with that, trying to get it right, because sometimes, you know, we all get frustrated. And then if it's not working out the way we want it to work out, I would practice it a couple times. Some of the other ways that people have suggested. And then if it comes out, like that might be my new way to do it. Or at least I may do a video and say, look, this is what I tried. This is how it came out. And because I've been doing it this way for years, I'm sticking with what I know. So it just depends. I will absolutely make that decision. But this has been the tried and true way. Okay, we're coming along that other pocket, remember, and if you just came in, we created these pockets. We created the pockets by taking a 4-inch square, folding them halfway on the diagonal, and then we press them, and the raw edges are here in the corners. So we're laying the binding on top of them right now, and we're stitching our binding on, and we're stopping a 1/4 inch from the edge. Needle stays in the down position because that's what helps us to pivot and turn it off for 45 degrees. If you did not keep that needle down, you're going to shift possibly your fabric. So 1/4 inch, and then we came off of that edge a 1/4 inch from the end. Again, here we are. I'm just folding this back. When I fold it back, because of that 1/4 inch that I slid off to the corner, it automatically forms this 1/4 inch line. And then I'm just going to fold it back onto itself, which will give me that nice triangle here that's going to help to create that miter. I'm just going to clip that to hold it in place. Now there are some people that will say that when you come on this side, you want to stop about 8 to 12 inches. Some people from this end down here. And this is where it was stitched. So if I just count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to stop at the end of that, so I'm going to stop right there. Right where that's going to be. So I'm just marking that to give myself enough of an opening to do what I need to do. Okay. So we're going to place this under the last side. Right down to purple. Go back stitch, and the reason why we're going to back stitch is because when we go to pull everything out, we don't want the seam that we just created, we don't want that stitch to come out, so we back stitch to hold that in place. Okay, so I made more than I needed, which is typical for me, but I can always use these for something. Okay, so there is overlap here that we want to happen. The overlap that we want to happen, we want a 2.5 inch overlap to happen. I need enough on this side. I'm just going to cut a little bit off. This is 2.5 inches wide, so I can use this, make sure I'm not crazy, to lay over here. And you could use a bigger piece, but I'm like, I needed to cut a little off for where I wanted this to stop. I wanted to give myself enough room right in here. And so I didn't want it that close to the seam. That's why I shaved off a little on this side, but I also need enough on this side as well. I have other scraps that are sitting next to me that I could have used. This is only going to be for a mark. I'm going to lay this piece over top. Let me back up. So I took my 2.5 inch strip. I'm going to stop at the edge.
I've turned off the china cabinet lights, but the living room
I'm
corner
going,
seems
okay,
offline.
I don't know why Alexa is going, but okay. So I'm going to start at the edge of this right here. This is the edge of the binding. And now this piece needs to stop at this edge. So I'm going to lay this on top because that's going to give me 2.5 inches of an overlap. Hold my finger just to be able to pull it back. Get that overlap. I'm folding it in half, and now I can use my scissors to cut. Okay, this is what's left over. That'll go in the leftover pile. Okay, I don't need this anymore. It can go in my scrap pile, and we'll show you, see that overlap. Okay, so that's a 2.5 inch overlap that I have. Okay, I like to use pins for this. Let me get those pins out. What I'm going to do, when I create my binding, I'm going to bring these two pieces together, and they're going to be perpendicular. In order to do this and not fight with the quilt, I'm just going to bring those two pieces together and just clip them like that. And that will hold this together so that I don't have to worry about it popping open and popping closed and doing the most. These two pieces now need to come together. This is what's going to help to finish it. Traditionally, people thought you would just take these two together, stitch across it. The problem is that if you do that when you stitch it open, you're gonna have a raw edge on this side. And you don't wanna have a raw edge on this side. Is it going to kill your project? No. But you prefer not to have that. You don't want all that bulk. So we're gonna open this up. And we're going to open this one up. Okay. And I'm just going to turn this so that they meet like a T. Once they meet, I go into my pins and I'm going to pin up near the top, and I'm going to pin down near the bottom. Now you can use a marking tool and draw a line across the diagonal from corner to corner if that's what you choose to do. I don't do all that because I can just about eye it, but you want to go this way, you don't want to go this way, because if you go this way you won't attach them. So I suggest that if you're new to this, I prefer to use a longer stitch to have this happen, because if I mess up, I can pull out a longer stitch. So if your machine is at a 2 or somewhere around there, I would suggest you come down a little bit, go up a little bit, so that maybe you're at a 3 or 4, because if you have to seam rip because you didn't do it right, then, and sometimes we turn it the wrong way, and that's how that happens. No harm, no foul. All you need to do is just rip it out and do it again. Okay, so we're gonna come back to the machine. I'm going to lower my needle because I want the corner and the edge right where I can see that cross. I'm going to put that right in the needle. And the reason I do that is just so that I know on the edge where I'm supposed to be. It's not much. And then I'm just going to stitch a few stitches. I want that needle to be down. And then I'm going to smooth out my binding. And the reason I do that, whether I am using a line that I drew or not, is because sometimes when you're putting these edges together, they have a tendency to roll up or fold underneath, and you don't want that. Okay. Great. Okay. So it'll look like this. I just did that line straight across, and again, you could draw it. I don't need to draw it because I can just about eyeball it and get it every time. I'll take my 2 pins out. First thing I'm going to do is check to make sure I did it right, because I can mess it up, and it looks good so far. I'm going to take these 2 out, and I can lay this flat. Okay? If it lays flat and I don't have a gap up here, then I'm great. If I have a gap up here, it may be too loose and I may need to do it again. So I just need to be careful to make sure that there's no gap up top, because that means I have too much. If there's a little bit of a gap underneath, when you go to pull your quilt a little bit, if it lays flat, no harm, no foul. If you gotta pull it a lot, it's too short and you're gonna have to add. So that's why it's important, get that 2.5. It's going to work every time with a 2.5 inch binding with a 2.5 inch overlay. Now I can go ahead and cut. Now that everything is straight, I'm going to cut that excess off. You can open up the binding like you did everywhere else when you were attaching it together. I like to finger press it. I don't have to take it to the machine. You can if you want to. And then I'm going to fold it back over on itself. So now it's nice and pretty. I'm going to open this back up, and I'm going to clip just to secure this. Now what I'm going to do is run a stitch, but I'm going to start up a little bit higher than where I stopped. And that's just to make sure that they lay over, and then I'm going to stop a little bit below where I stopped. Okay, where I started. And then our whole binding will be on at that point, and then we'll be ready to flip it. Now I really should get the walking foot out for this part, because the walking foot will make it easier. But again, anybody who's coming in late, I'm doing it without the walking foot today, just because I wanted to show it without the walking foot in case there were people that didn't have it, because when you practice without it and then when you get the walking foot, you're gonna appreciate it even more. Okay, so now that's stitched in, and you can't tell where it stopped and where it started, and that's the wonderful part. Okay, where are we? I don't need my clips anymore, so I'm gonna take those off. Up here. Okay, what you can do now is take it to your ironing board, and you may have some threads that snuck through to the other side, and you can just clip those. Take it to my ironing board, and I can press these out. Okay, you don't have to, that's a personal choice, but if you want to, you can press them out. When you get here to the corner, however, remember we made those pockets. I'm just going to turn that out, right? Here's the pocket. So this is now where that rod is going to go when I go to hang my quilt. So her head is up top, and I have a pocket here on this side, and I have a pocket here on this side. So when I turn the binding over, I don't want to turn the pocket over too. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the pocket on this side, and this would be the same way if you were adding a label. So the labels would go in the same exact way, except they would be usually at the bottom of the quilt rather than at the top of the quilt. So the pockets go at the top. If this is a wall hanging or something you're going to hang up, the label that I didn't put on here is going to go at the bottom. Okay. Oh, I don't know why I'm turning that in. Okay. And let me just go around this, and I'm just gonna pop out, and you can see how that mitered corner just looks, right? So it's just, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, and I'm just popping them out. I have some threads that I possibly need to cut, but I don't have to worry about popping them out along the way. Okay, cool. Now what we're going to do, again, your choice, you can press these open if you like, or you can leave them as is. I'm going to show you a couple different things. So I will absolutely go rogue, turn this over, and then just stitch. If you prefer, you can use a water-based glue. You can put that glue on top, and you can glue base it into place. Okay, if you choose to do it this way, then once you glue it into place, then you must take it to your iron. And I just use the clips just to hold it, but you want to take it to your iron to set that glue, as I'm dropping clips on the floor. Okay. So then what happens is it'll hold it in place for you, so then you don't have to have the clips. And it's also going to ensure that as you're going around this, you're getting it right lined up with that stitch that you created to join the binding together. And that's important because you may not want that to show when you do the binding. You don't care if it shows, then no harm, no foul. So you can clip it, or you can just iron and go. It doesn't need long, it's just enough to set the glue. Make sure all of your little stragglies are inside. And it's just like a kid's glue, right? So you want something washable, because if you get it on the quilt, you want to be able to wash it off. You don't want to stick into your hands stick into the quilt. It also makes it easier to readjust it if needed. Okay. And again, you can clip all the way around if you prefer. It doesn't matter. Or you can do this glue basting method. I will say this, and I'll show it to you again. We are not using a lot of glue. You don't need a ton of glue. You're not gluing it and then pressing with your hand and waiting for it to dry. You're using your iron, and this is not meant to be permanent because you're going to stitch this down. So you don't need a lot of glue because it doesn't have to stay there forever and ever and ever and to hold it in place. Okay, we get to the corner. I want to run this off and have this go, let me see. Sometimes it will do better going one way than going the other. It wants to go this way. Like if it's folding on top of itself and it looks a little wonky, try pushing it from the other direction, which is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go all the way down on this side. I'm going to start it this way because that's the way it wants to go. If my pieces and my binding are telling me one thing, sometimes I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to get that glue in the corner. And again, I don't need a lot. Okay, this wants to go this way for me. And then this one wants to go right over top of it. I want those two pieces to meet. And that's the great thing about the glue not sticking right away, is that you can have them meet to make that corner. And then we'll press it to hold it in place. And you can see that miter. And then I'm just in case it pops up, I'm gonna put a clip there. Okay. A long string that I don't need. And again, this is your choice. This is not something that you have to do. It was a game changer for me. That's a favorite word for me. Game changer. Because I want this, especially because it's on top, to be as straight as I possibly can get it. And the glue basting helps to make that happen. Okay. And again, thank you for liking this video. I appreciate you. Welcome into the chat. We are just putting the binding on for this particular quilt top. This is a mini quilt. So we did attach the binding already. And we went through how to miter the corners, how to connect the two tails. And now we are just flipping this over, and we're using a glue basting method to do that. Now I will show you, because it wanted to do its own thing on that side. I'm going to see if it wants to do its own thing on this side. So again, if I try to push this down in this corner, it wants to give me just a little bit of a gap right down here. So that's why I'm trying it from this end, because for some reason, and it may be that's the way that I sewed it, it's willing to give me less of a pocket down there, if you will. It's laying a lot flatter. So it wants to go this way from the bottom to make the miter. So I'm going to let it go in the direction that it wants to go in. So I'm just paying attention to what my binding wants to do. And like I said, it may be just that was just the direction it was in. But sometimes it does it the other way. Okay. And we can just press that a little bit so you could see that corner like perfectly. This is what we want. We want that to happen. And let me hold that up just so you can see that. Okay. So now we can finish this end. And again, you don't need, oops, that didn't even come out, right? You don't need a lot of glue. You just want just enough to secure that in place. And I mean like little bitty beads, not big beads. Because what happens is that even though, you know, it's not a lot, if you use more than you need to, sometimes it will be hard for your needle to go through the way that you want it to. So you don't want your needle to fight with the glue. Okay, and that's a nice press, and you can see that miter right there. Everything is lined up. And again, I can use a couple clips in that corner. You can see the miter on this side. Just in case it gets caught in something along the way. I don't want it to come out as I'm stitching. Because the great thing is that like if you do the prep now, you don't have to arrange and rearrange it later. And then you're just going around all four corners and you're done. Okay. I want to pop back up. Just pay attention to what you're doing. And if your iron has a tendency to just shift it over because, you know, it is what it is, because we kind of sort of like to make mistakes, that's why you can just pull it back up with, you know, this type of glue. It's not going to hold it like permanently. And if it did, we wouldn't have to worry about stitching it down. I don't care if it's a wall hanging or not. This glue is not meant to be temporary on your fabric. Now, I will say this, you could probably glue it down and it might last you a couple years glued. It might. But that's not a chance that I'm willing to take. I want it to last, period. Okay, so we're almost to the end. But again, remember, it wants to play its own direction on me. So I'm just going to go to the bottom and do that so that I get that point. Because once I figure it out, it's going to do the same thing. So there's no sense in waiting until I get almost down there and auditioning and playing with it. It's going to do it. And then we'll press. And you'll see it doesn't take long to hold it in place for that to, you know, tack that down. And you're not married to using glue. And I'll show you not a lot of glue. Not a lot at all. So, I mean, I should be, and I have been for as many quilts as I've done this way. I'm using the same bottle and using very little glue. That bottle is going to last me probably for all of the quilt projects that I do that I use the glue for. So you don't even need that big bottle. I have that big bottle because I was using it for something else. And I was like, you know what? I'm not buying bottle of glue when I already have a bottle of glue in the house. Some people use glue sticks, and you can absolutely use washable glue sticks too. So it's solely up to you what type of glue you use, and especially if you're going out to buy glue, because this will last. The only thing about glue sticks is if you are putting together patterns and you use the glue sticks for that, I would absolutely say, yeah, go out and buy glue sticks. I don't, unless you're doing a lot of binding, I wouldn't necessarily use glue sticks, and that's just me, because they do dry out over time. So depending on how many projects you're working or how often you use it, if you quilt as much as I do, it wouldn't matter. Like I said, the only reason why I didn't get glue sticks is because I had that big behind bottle of glue. I was doing paper crafts, and I was like, "Yeah, you need the glue." So then I got the glue, and then I haven't done the paper craft, so I have all that glue. We'll hold that in place. And we're almost to the edge. Again, that glue goes there. Oops. Now, be nice to pay attention to where the clips are because, I don't want to melt them. You don't have to hold long. Smooth that out the way for you. And then here we go to the last corner. And again, we said that the bottom was what was fighting us to get into that corner. So I'm just going to go ahead. Ooh, the sun moved. You can really see it now. Okay. And so I can smooth that out. I think it's the last time I need that iron too. Now, we'll go this way. And then we'll flip this over. Okay. And then we will just add a little more glue there. We didn't get, it gets all over my hand, so I tend not to do big areas all at once, just because. Thank you for liking the video. I appreciate you. And there we go. Right into that corner. And one final press. I'll just use another clip right here. So you can see right here, like see how it's like coming up just a little bit. Like again, we didn't use enough glue. We only used a little line. So we're not, that's one of the reasons why I'm saying I wouldn't do this permanently, because it's not meant to be permanent. It's just meant to hold it in place so that now you can stitch all the way around. So we bring back our machines. Oops. What did I hit? There we go. So I'll bring back my machine. I'm gonna lift my needle up, and I want it to go right on the edge. This is up to you what type of stitch you would like to use. Some people would use a straight stitch, which is what I'm using. Some people like to use a diagonal zigzag. It's up to you. So I'm going to go a couple stitches forward, do a little bit of a back stitch, and that's just me. And I'm paying attention right to that line because I want to stitch about a 1/16 of an inch. I want to just capture the edge of the binding. And this is what's going to help that binding to lay nice and flat. If you're not using clips and you're using pins, absolutely you want to make sure that you're not running over them. Needle in the down position, lift my foot up. That helps me to pivot and turn. Now the goal is not to run off of the binding, and that's why some people might not use that 16th or less of an inch. They might use the 1/8 and then be okay with a little bit of lift. You want it to be as straight as possible, and you don't want to do a lot of back tacks to capture it if you go off. And again, the glue is not going to hold this down permanently. So you don't want to trust, well, you know, I glued it down so it'll stay. Yeah, may or may not. And if you use that much glue to keep it down, your needle is going to be fighting you and hating you right about now as you're going through the binding. And again, I could absolutely use my walking foot. My walking foot would help me to keep it straight, to help me to move the layers through a lot faster. I'm choosing not to do it that way just because I wanted to show this without, for somebody who wouldn't necessarily have all the tools, because it can be done. Whoops. We have to put the foot down. Again, thank you for liking the live. We are finishing up the African Queen quilt. My goal is to finish up quilts that I have in my stash that I've created in the last couple months. This one was done in February, or that have been in my stash for possibly years. So the goal is to get them done. This is a little bit of a palette cleanse because it's smaller than some of the other quilts that I need to get done. So we're almost, we have what, 1.5 more to go. Okay. Got one more I can get before I have to pivot. So I will hand crank because that is not beneath me to hand crank to get it where I want it to go. I want that needle in the down position so that I can pivot and then start the next side. If your needle is in the up position, you run the risk of moving your fabric out of line, and then you get puckers in your thread. This way it keeps your thread nice and even. If you have a wonderful machine, which I have upstairs and not these, this one, it will stop in the down position for you if you set it that way. Me, I have to just, it's either luck of the draw, or it's hand crank it, or it's, you know, just keep doing it until it possibly goes to the bottom. Because it doesn't always work for me with this one. And I'm in no rush again because I'm trying to get along that edge. Unless this was a race, I'm not interested in going quickly. I'm interested in making sure that it looks the way that I want it to look. So I don't want any jagged, wiggly looking lines if I can help it. I want to keep everything as straight as I possibly can. These are my needles. These are my clips. I just want to move those out the way. Yep, no more clips. And then we'll turn this and See, this is why you need to pay attention to the bottom, because that little piece that was hanging off at the bottom got all caught up into the seams. And it's not impossible to undo this. Don't ask me where my seam ripper is, because this is just the excess. I can just pull all that out. So actually what happened was the front wrapped around to the back, because I wasn't paying attention. So I don't want to run over with that next stitch with this until I get this one out, and I can just play with it a little bit to get it out. So, oops. So I know that that's not my stitch that I'm cutting out. I know that those are those edges of the tails of the thread. So I'm just getting in there as best as I can, and I'm just clipping that out. And then as I get closer, I can get those out. Okay, good. Okay, so it took a little bit of doing, but I got that out. Let me put my needle. I like to make sure that my pins go back, because I'm a barefoot person, and there's nothing worse than getting stuck with a pin. Okay. I can either tell that my needle needs to be changed, or that my needle, and I think that's part of the something, but it's also going through a lot of layers, or it was just hitting some of that glue, which it shouldn't have been hitting. Okay. Cool beans. Here we go. And we'll take that off on that side. And we'll take this off on this side. Sometimes I will cut those tails and cut them close just to avoid those problems. And then sometimes it just doesn't happen because you mess up. Okay, I know what's happening. When I move my machine back, it's moving the tripod. Okay, let's move that way. Thank you for hitting the lights. Okay. So here we go with the finished product, right? So we have added that, oh, no, yeah, we added binding, but we also added pockets, right? So I have a pocket here, and I have a pocket here. They were just 4-inch squares that I folded in half on the diagonal. Once I folded those in one half on the diagonal, this is the fold. And then I placed the raw edges up here in this corner. So they all get enclosed in the seams with the binding. So you don't see those. So now I can go to the store and get a rod, like a wooden rod or metal rod, depending on what fits, for the length of this. And that rod will hold them in place so that that lays nice and straight when you hang it. Sometimes we would prefer those than to putting the hangers here, because the hangers that sit here don't help the whole quilt necessarily to stretch taut from end to end, so that it doesn't kind of, you know, buckle like this. So sometimes it's to your advantage to have those pockets in the corners and to have them done. That way, if you are giving this as a gift to someone, they automatically, you know, can have the rod. You tell them what kind of rod to get, or you could give them the rod, and then they can just hang it from there. So we added the pockets in here, and then we attached the binding to this. I decided to use the same binding that I did here. This would be a pet peeve for some people because some people like to match things up. It doesn't bother me that, these don't align. Like it aligns here a little bit. It looks intentional, but it doesn't look intentional here. But like I said, it's not the end of the world. So the entire thing is done. You can see the stitches right along the edges that I worked on with this. So I got them as close as I could to that edge. So now I don't have to worry about that lifting up on me. So I now have this one. This is finished. We can add this to the completed pile. So I have now another quilt done in my abyss of projectsness. And so thank you for joining me today for quilting the African Queen. She is done and she is ready for her home, wherever that home may be. Until next time, thank you for joining me, G Hill Designs, Dr. Jen, for quilting. This was on the binding, and I think I need to do a video on how to do binding. So that's another video that I will have. Feel free to leave comments or DM me if there are videos that you would like to see. Until then, have a great day.